Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today. Good to see everyone. I'm Daren Maloney, a member of the Board of Trustees for Columbus Metropolitan Club, and I'm also a Senior Vice President in the Commercial Banking Group at PNC. Today's debate is part of CMC's political season, sponsored by Hannah News Service, the Daily Reporter, the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation, and the Franklin County Farm Bureau. Each of their representatives and their associates and friends are here today, so please let's thank them. Audience questions today will be submitted in writing versus the typical standing up at the microphone and queuing. So you'll find a piece of paper in your forum flyer today. If you'd like to submit something, please do so. They'll have people walking around to grab those from you from our program committee. They'll collect those about midway through our discussion. The best questions will be selected for content and relevance and read aloud by program committee members during the Q&A portion. Now, without further ado, won't you please help me welcome to the candidates for Franklin County Prosecutor, the incumbent, Mr. Ron O'Brien.
Thank you, thank you.
And the challenger, Mr. Zach Klein. Our moderator today is my fellow CMC board member and retired journalist, Carol Luper. Carol?
Thank you, Daren. I am very happy to be here today. It just means there are fewer days till Tuesday. We look forward to an engaging conversation today. A few details about today's format that you need to know. Daren mentioned audience questions today will be written. Start thinking about them. There should be pencils and paper at your table. And when you have questions, just raise your hand. One of our program committee board members will come over and get the question. Please be sure your name is on it, because we're not going to ask any questions unless the name is on it. They'll start collecting them about halfway through the program. The candidates will each have 1 minute for opening remarks and 30 seconds after all the questions have been asked for closing remarks. Zach will go first. We had a coin toss. Zach will go first, and then Ron. After opening remarks, I will moderate the conversation with questions and move things along as necessary. Rebuttals will be allowed. Keep in mind, we're going to try and, as closely as possible, give equal time. Rebuttals are considered part of your speaking time. We've got that clear. Let me go with my first question. And this is a question for both of you. Start your 1 minute now. We got our timekeeper over here. And Zach, 1 minute for your opening statement.
Okay. Well, thank you, Carol. And thank you to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. It's great to be back for an enlightening debate about this important race. I'm Zach Klein. I'm the City Council President. And prior to serving as the Council President, I was the Chairman of the Safety Committee on Columbus City Council. And it was there and then my time as City Council President that I've seen firsthand what issues of mass incarceration and drug addiction and human trafficking and the tolls that they've taken on our community. And I'm a believer that there is no better place to work on those issues, to fight for those issues, than the gatekeeper of the criminal justice system. And in this county, it's the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office.
Thank you, Carol. And again, thank you to the Metropolitan Club. This election is about experience. It's about experience to run the largest law office in the state dealing with prosecution outside of Cuyahoga County. We have a population of over 1 million people. I've been there. I started there as a law student in George Smith as county prosecutor, worked for George. I've had the experience to do the job. I've been in the courtroom. Mr. Klein, as you can see from the handout on the table in front of you, has never, ever walked in a courtroom in his life, nor ran a law office that exceeds 100 lawyers. And that is the stark difference between myself and Mr. Klein. It's that experience I've talked to the public about through this year, and it's that experience that I think you as citizens not only want, but you deserve to have in your county prosecutor.
And my first question goes right to the heart of that. and I'll start with Zach Klein and then Ron. The issue of experience in the courtroom keeps coming up. How important is experience for the Franklin County Prosecutor?
Well, first of all, I'm proud of my experience. I have worked at the White House for Vice President Biden as the Deputy Director of Management Administration for the Office of the Vice President of the United States. I clerked for 2 federal judges. I was an Assistant Attorney General, a Special Assistant United States Attorney. I was a lawyer at one of the world's largest law firms called Jones Day. I am now the General Counsel down at the Mid-Ohio Food Bank. I am been on council for 6 years, chaired the Safety Committee, and now I'm the Council President. So I'm proud of the things that I've done, and I think it's through that perspective that I've gained not only the experience, but the judgment that's necessary to be the next Franklin County Prosecutor. These are very complex problems facing our country. Issues like mass incarceration, issues of drug addiction, and issues of human trafficking. And we need to turn the dynamic of the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office, and frankly, prosecutors' offices around the country, on its head to challenge the status quo of the criminal justice system. It's time for a prosecutor's office not just to be reactive. That is the way that the prosecutor's office is here in Franklin County. It's the way many prosecutors' offices are here in this country. And what I mean by reactive is a crime is committed, an investigation is done by police, and it's handed over to the prosecutor's office to go through the court system. There are bad people that deserve to go to jail for a very long time. Make no mistake about it. And there is an important reactive role a prosecutor plays. But the reality is, in the 21st century, there is just as an important role that the prosecutor must be proactive. That means out in the community. And it's not just the prosecutor. It's the prosecutor's staff. It's people that work for him. That is an office that's engaged in the community, an office that looks like the community, because right now only 4% of the lawyers are African American in the office. That's not reflective of the diversity of the city of Columbus. So if we're not out in the community working every day with the community members to tackle problems that they have, then we're really failing ourselves and not maximizing the true potential of what the county prosecutor's office has done. Now, 2 things. The first is, in 2014, which is the last year these stats were available, there were 12,000 criminal filings in Franklin County, 12,000. 190 went to trial. That's 1.5%. This isn't about the 1.5%. This is about the 98.5%. And secondarily, we all know Rich Cordray. We all know Rick Pfeiffer. They have never tried a criminal case. Would we be standing here saying that Rich Cordray or Rick Pfeiffer is not experienced enough to be the Franklin County prosecutor? Of course not. It's about their life experiences and what they've done as people that they bring to the table to be the next Franklin County prosecutor.
Ladies and gentlemen, you just saw the answer of a politician, and I think that's the difference between me and Mr. Klein. This is an elective office, but it's not a political office. Mr. Klein's a professional politician. He didn't answer the question that was asked. He used improper, inaccurate information in his answer. He talked about what the job of the office is. He has no idea what we do, and he has no idea what we are doing now. He talks about having an outward-facing office. We are in the community daily. I am in the community daily. I'm in the courtroom regularly and have been. As a law student working in the prosecutor's office, I have tried more cases before I got out of law school than Mr. Klein has in his entire legal career. Just think about that for a minute. If you're hiring a lawyer, and that's what you're doing in this election, would you go when you're facing a serious case in litigation, whether it's in divorce court, whether you're a businessman who has a case that's been filed against you, a personal injury case, are you going to look in the yellow pages or call a friend and say, give me the name of a lawyer to handle my divorce who's never handled a divorce before? That's just exactly who I want. And at Fred Luper's law firm, do you think Fred goes down the hall when an important client walks in the front door and says, hey, who here has never handled the kind of case our most important client wants to be handled? Of course not. Of course not. Mr. Klein is very good at buzzwords, and you just heard a few of them. Mass incarceration. You heard some other words, forward-looking, outward-looking, in the community. We deal with laws passed by the Ohio legislature. We're the part of the executive branch, we enforce the laws of the state, and we are proactive, and he well knows it. In the May Columbus Monthly, Scott Vanderkar, this isn't Ron O'Brien saying, Scott Vanderkar said, we have a drug court in Franklin County because Ron O'Brien, before it was on the front page of the paper, came to me and asked me to start a drug court, a successful drug court. We have had an award, if you look at the pass out Mr. Klein talks, put on your paper, he talks about diversion. We've had an award-winning diversion program in this office since before he was born. He doesn't know that. He talks about us having guidelines for that program. We have 8 pages of guidelines I sent to the Dispatch when he told them the same thing. He's running for a political office and has, with his state chairman, said he wants to politicize the office. Experience, judgment, and common sense are what's needed in that office, and some trial experience that he is totally lacking. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. The irony is that Ron has been running for office since 1985. So to say that I'm the politician would not be the full, true extent of the story. And we have to do a better job in this county of exercising the enormous power that the prosecutor's office has to change the dynamic on the criminal justice system. You mentioned the drug court, Ron. The reality is the drug court was started in 2009, but the growth and the expansion of the drug court was because of Columbus City Council. What we have done in expanding the drug court because of the proliferation of heroin is all due to the fact of what we have done out of City Hall, not because of what you have done and the prosecutor's office. Again, I'm being respectful, with all due respect. It is, as it relates to diversion, the reality is there has been a program, as Ron indicated. That is a fact. But the reality is when you talk to members of the bar that practice in the court, when you talk to judges, there is no rhyme or reason of a determination of who gets in and who's not allowed into the diversion program. So while there may be a program that's available, it's not an effective program that truly allows individuals that are dealing with drug addiction, specifically nonviolent offenders, that are dealing with mental health issues, the ability to not get the scarlet letter of a felony on their record. We need to have a process that is clear and defined so that everyone is open and transparent. And this is, by the way, this also directly goes to the fact of building faith in the criminal justice system that's open and transparent of who can get in diversion and who cannot. Right now, there is no guideline. Finally, and I'll be happy to yield my time back, there are a lot of progressive things that county prosecutors are doing around this country as it relates to diversion and medicated assisted treatment. And we need to start thinking about those a little bit more aggressively in Franklin County with the proliferation of heroin and the ability to use Suboxone, methadone, and Vivitrol to make a difference in these people's lives. And that takes partnerships and leadership out of the office. That takes bringing the county prosecutor, him or herself, working with nonprofits like Alvis or Southeast, bringing them to the table so that they can provide the drug addiction services that are needed. We can't be solely worried about conviction rates. Conviction rates are important, make no mistake about it. But it's time to start thinking about recidivism rates. If we truly want to make us safer, we have to treat the underlying reasons why people are touching the criminal justice system. If we do not do that, then people will continue to commit the crimes, they'll continue to burglarize your house, continue to break into your car to steal a couple bucks to buy heroin. If we don't start tackling those basic reasons of why people are touching the criminal justice system, then we're going to fail, and we're really not doing criminal justice reform.
Do you want to respond?
I guess I would only respond to say Mr. Klein's answer again illustrates he's detached from reality. John O'Grady and Marilyn Brown are sitting right here, and they will tell you they fund that drug court. Scott Vanderkar comes over and they pass resolutions because City Council is not fully funding it. And Ron O'Brien, through his drug forfeiture fund, last year wrote a check for $35,000, money taken from drug dealers off the streets, and gave that both to Paul Herbert, who runs the catch court, and to Scott Vanderkar, who ran the drug court. Because you're not fully funding them, Mr. Klein. So you sit here and say these things. You have no idea what you're doing, let alone what we do in our office.
That's not what I said. I said the expansion of drug court due to the proliferation of heroin was due to the Columbus City Council expanding the drug court. I did not say that the county did not fund the drug court. I'm very well aware that your office does a nominal contribution to the drug court as well as the county's contribution. But the expansion of the drug court and the catch court and the veterans court has come through the leadership of the Columbus City Council.
I'm going to change to a different subject, and I'll start with Mr. O'Brien. Talk about the appointment of independent investigators in police shootings. As it is now, the prosecutor takes them to the grand jury, and the grand jury gets the case. I'll ask Mr. O'Brien and then Mr. Klein the same thing. Should independent investigators and prosecutors handle police-involved shootings?
That's a two-part question, and I think we all should make quite clear that the prosecutor's office does not control who investigates a crime. Ohio law provides that the jurisdiction where the crime's committed is investigated by that law enforcement agency, and the city of Columbus has chosen in police shooting cases to assign a CERT team to investigate those. That is a choice that either the mayor, city council, safety director, police chief can make and ask BCI to come in, for example, to investigate. Could ask the county sheriff in all cases of police shootings to investigate if there's a concern about independence. A lot of members of the public think that the prosecutor investigates police shootings. We do not. We get a file from the police when the investigation's concluded. We review it, we make a determination in that case to automatically present it to the grand jury. My predecessor, Mike Miller, in 1980, decided to have all cases, whether it's in this room here with all you folks here as a witness and on videotape, if a police shooting were to occur, that would automatically go to the grand jury for that independent group of folks to hear, decide, be instructed on the law, and determine whether any degree of homicide should be filed. That process has been followed during the 20 years I have been county prosecutor. I have not asked for an independent or special prosecutor in those kinds of cases because a conflict under the law, as I view it, did not exist. Last year, a man by the name of Javier Armengol was accused of rape, was tried in common pleas court by the Attorney General's office. I asked for a special prosecutor in that case because he was a defense attorney appearing regularly in our court, and I didn't think it was proper for us to handle that case. The former county chairman of the Democratic Party, Bill Anthony, worked at the Board of Elections, was indicted. I chose to disqualify myself from that case, appointed a special prosecutor at the state auditor's office who had prosecutorial experience. When the law requires it, we appoint special prosecutors, and if some recommendations have been made by groups that have studied it, including, I know Kevin Boyce is here, and I think he introduced a bill at the legislature to deal with some of these kind of things, along with Alicia Reese, who I served with, along with Nina Turner, on the Governor's Police Community Relations Collaborative. But currently that's governed by state law, and I have not found a conflict to exist, so have not appointed a special prosecutor. Should one exist, I would certainly do that.
Well, these are very tough questions, especially when you go into communities of color that believe that not only police officers, but the touch points with the criminal justice system, prosecutor and judges, they feel like the system is stacked against them. So this is something I'm particularly sensitive to in the work that I've done on Columbus City Council. And so the determination I made is you have to first recognize that there is a sensitivity, that people lack faith and confidence in the criminal justice system. But you have to balance that with electoral accountability. And what I mean by that is the prosecutor is an elected office. In 6 days, you can vote for me or for Mr. O'Brien. And that's what happened to Cuyahoga County Prosecutor Tim McGinty. And if you're not familiar with what happened with Mr. McGinty, he received a primary challenge earlier this year. And he was voted out of office because people in Cuyahoga County thought that he did not do a good job, among other cases, but with the Tamir Rice case. And voters voted him out of office. So I'm afraid that if we gave up the power of the prosecutor's office when it involves police-involved shootings, that we give up that electoral accountability. Because you can't fire a bureaucrat, but you can vote out an elected official. So balancing those two conflicting positions I think you have to maintain, under current Ohio law, the status quo. But I will say that I am open to change, and I'm open to best practices, because it is just as important, and far too long has it been a conversation about the relationship between the police and the community, and a community conversation with the police and the community. But the reality is, it's how do you build faith with the criminal justice system? And that means police, prosecutors, and judges. And that's why it's so important to be involved in the community, not just be down at the courthouse.
Another question, and I'll start with Zach. Why are out-of-state contributors giving so much money to this prosecutor's race in Franklin County, Ohio?
Well, I solicited contributions from people I know. I referee Division I women's basketball, so there's a lot of people from around this country that I've received contributions from. I think people want criminal justice reform, and the message that I'm giving about and providing about having an outward-facing office, a diverse office, an office that's engaged in the community is resonating with people in Franklin County and with people across this country. This is a national conversation. Carol, if you remember that Hillary Clinton, when she announced that she was running for President of the United States, her very first presidential campaign speech was at Columbia University about criminal justice reform. You know, as much as we think that we live in a bubble in Franklin County because of all the attention we get not only in the Franklin County prosecutor's race, but the presidential race and the Senate race, the reality is this is a national conversation. And we are the largest county in Ohio. And I think, and I firmly believe this, and I'm passionate about it, that the reform that's happening on the East Coast and the West Coast, if we can bring that into the Midwest, then we can be a national leader on these changes. And I think that has resonated with a lot of people that are contributing both to Ron and to me. But we have a wide variety of contributions. I think we had nearly 1,500 contributions in our race, at least on my side. I don't know how many Ron had. But it's because people want change. They want criminal justice reform.
Ron, why are out-of-state contributors giving to your campaign?
I don't have too many out-of-state contributors, but in looking at Mr. Klein's report, a full, and I want to make this number very clear, a full 28% of his contributors are from out of Ohio, California, Florida, Illinois, all across the country, including $20,000 from George Soros and New York City. Now tell me what George Soros has to do or cares about the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. Tell me what those PAC contributors who were given $10, $12, who were spread across 20 different states that were listed on the last 3 pages of his report, what their interest is in the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. The state chairman, David Pepper, announced at the Christmas party last year of the Democratic Party here in Columbus, he wanted to turn this office into a political office. He thinks, contrary to what the facts are, that we're ignoring Republican crooks at the State House. He said that publicly. He said, I want to take over the prosecutor's office, and Mr. Klein is the tool I'm going to use to do it. And he and his folks have solicited this money across the country to try and buy this prosecutor's office and use it for a 2018 election here in Ohio. And that's why that out-of-state money is coming here, and no other reason.
Sure. I mean, I think a third of Ron's money came from his own office staff in the Ohio Republican Party. His own office staff in the Ohio Republican Party. And David Pepper is my friend, but he doesn't speak for me. I'm running for this office because I believe in the issues. And with all due respect to Mr. Pepper, he's not my campaign manager or my campaign spokesperson. I want to do the job that I know this office can, to reach the potential that this office can have. And I'm a firm believer that we can do this together because these are complex problems. When you think about the issues of mass incarceration and you think about human trafficking and drug addiction, these are decade-long problems. And I'm not going to put them squarely on Ron's shoulders because they are countrywide problems. But we can do better. And the change starts here in Franklin County.
I have a specific question now for each of you. And Zach, you were just elected president of Columbus City Council. How can you leave that position so quickly to run for prosecutor?
So I've served on Columbus City Council for 6 years. I ran in November 2011, ran in November 2015. I was fortunate enough to win that election. And it was, Carol, my time as the Safety Committee chairman and prior to becoming council president that I saw firsthand in our community, what issues like drug addiction and human trafficking and the tolls they've taken on our community. And there is no better place to tackle those issues than the gatekeeper of the criminal justice system. No better place. In this county, it's the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. And it's been 16 years since voters in this county had a choice on who their prosecutor is. I wanted to give voters a choice, and they're going to have a choice on November 8th.
I have a question for you as well that is not that question. Would you like to respond to that question?
Yes, he's running for this office because he's a political opportunist. 4 years ago, he talked to people, friends of mine in the labor community, and wanted to run for prosecutor in 2012. He was at Jones Day, as he alluded to earlier, and they did not want him to run for prosecutor and stay at that office. So he chose not to run then. And then in the 4 years while he was on city council in the interim, he didn't handle a single case either. Speed ticket, parking ticket, or otherwise. But then, a year ago, told folks such as you at debates such as this, I want to be your council member. I want to work with new Mayor Ginther. I want to move the city forward. He's a political opportunist who's moving up the greasy pole, and he's told some of my other friends, I might add, some of them in this room, I will add, that he wants to run for prosecutor so that he can run for attorney general in 2018. And that's no secret in the Democratic circles or among Democratic lawyers.
Let me just clarify that. The only person talking about me running in 2018 is Ron O'Brien. I am not running in 2018. When I win this seat in November 8th, I am going to run for re-election in November of 2020 as your county prosecutor.
He said that to you last year when he was running for council. And look what he did.
That's simply not true. That's 100. He's channeling his inner Donald Trump. That is not true. That is 100% lie.
There's the politician speaking again, folks.
Speaking of Donald Trump, this question is for you, Mr. O'Brien. Will you come out, will you say that you are going to support Donald Trump or vote for Donald Trump?
I have not endorsed. I am not supporting Donald Trump. He's not asked me to support him. He's not asked me to endorse him. I am running my own campaign, and believe me, it takes morning, noon, and night trying to do the day job. And I have not, someone asked last week, I will decide when I go to vote. And by the way, Jim Comey might have another announcement before the election that might cause me to vote differently on Election Day than I would today. And WikiLeaks may have something additional to add before the election. So I will decide who I am voting for, but certainly to date have not been asked to either endorse or to support Donald Trump and made no statements otherwise, contrary to what Mr. Klein, the politician and his consultants decided to do a TV ad suggesting that I am supporting him.
What you do in the polling place or on your absentee ballot is private. Will you say how you voted when you vote?
Sure.
Next
Frankly,
question.
I've heard enough of Donald Trump and know that I am adamantly supporting Hillary Clinton for President of the United States. I don't know if it was the racist comments, the prejudicial comments, the comments about groping women, the comments of sexual assault, the xenophobic comments, but I think the line is pretty clear on the choice for presidency, and the fact that there are folks that are even John Kasich couldn't even, and kudos to John Kasich, couldn't even stomach voting for Donald Trump because of what he stands for and the choice of who we want to be as Americans.
You know, I would add, Carol, that I've been prosecutor 20 years, and there's been 3 different presidents in the White House during that period of time, and it hasn't made one whit of difference how the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office does their job.
But it does,
Those cases going into court don't have anything to do with who the president is, and it's a distraction that Mr. Klein, and again, the people that do his polls that tell him Donald Trump is not popular, that he has decided he wants to run against Donald Trump, not Ron O'Brien, because he can't run against Ron O'Brien with his background and his experience that is totally lacking, and his inability to explain to the public what he would do when he would get there.
But it's not about the vote for presidency. It's about having the judgment that you think Donald Trump is okay to be the president. It's not a matter of who's going to sit in the Oval Office and working across several decades of different presidents. It comes down to judgment. That's specifically what the Donald Trump question is about. I never felt that way about Obama versus Romney. I never felt that way about Obama versus McCain. I always thought there was going to be a country 4 years later, even though I adamantly worked for Barack Obama to make sure he was the winner. It came down to judgment. And the fact that Donald Trump is still on your mind is a judgment question. And that's why that is relevant. Who you end up voting for is fine. But it comes down to judgment. And that's what is the key to the Donald Trump question and why it's so troubling that Ron O'Brien has not distanced himself and rejected Donald Trump. It's a complete judgment issue.
Another question for both of you. You brought it up, so I'll start with you. Talk about the need for diversity in the office.
I've been a big proponent of diversity on not only city council, but my city council staff. We got to have an office that looks like the community. That doesn't excuse people's conduct. Criminal conduct is criminal conduct. But what it does is give a perspective that some people simply don't have. When you live in the suburbs and you're fortunate enough, like I have been fortunate enough, my parents are here, we had a very strong middle class, upper middle class upbringing. I was very fortunate. Ron makes a good wage, raised his kids in Clintonville, very fortunate. But not everyone has our upbringing. So it's important to have diversity so you have perspective, you have cultural understanding. It's not just something that you cross off the list because you want to do it. You have diversity because it makes a difference when it comes to plea recommendations, when it comes to sentencing recommendations, when it comes to cases before the grand jury, when it comes to interfacing with the community, that you have the perspective that not everyone is like you and not everyone is as fortunate enough as you. And I've been very fortunate, but that's why diversity is important.
Mr. O'Brien, you run the office. Talk about diversity.
Thank you, Carol. In 1986, when I was the city attorney, we were the founding members of the Columbus Bar Association minority clerkship program, designed to have law students come and work in not only government law offices, but private law offices to develop a relationship and hopefully ending in employment after graduation from law school. It was headed by Guy Reese. Guy Reese is an African-American judge. Yvette McGee Brown worked for me. Was on the ticket with Strickland in 2010 as a lieutenant governor. She worked for me, and actually she's endorsed me this year. If I have such a bad record for diversity in the office, it would be surprising Yvette would be supporting me. Steve McIntosh, another African-American judge, worked for me when I was city prosecutor. Andrea Peoples, who's an African-American judge, was hired by me when I was city prosecutor and hired again by me when I was the county prosecutor. She's a municipal court judge. Dwayne Maynard I hired as a law student. He was a judge in municipal court for many years, African-American, worked in our office. All judges I can think of who have taken the bench who are African-Americans worked for me during the time I was city attorney or county prosecutor. I think it's more than numbers. Mr. Klein likes to throw out numbers. I attended the Columbus Police Department graduation and saw 3 African Americans in their graduating class last time. I gave a speech last week to the new graduating class that's about to take the street, and I saw 4. You know, it's one thing talking about what you will do, but what has he done where he has been on council for 5 years and he's done nothing? In the Columbus Division of Police, which are the first responders on the street dealing with these mass incarceration issues, his buzzword, and arrests, there are 25 out of 1,800 police officers, 25 African-American supervisors, 22 sergeants, 3 lieutenants, 0 commanders, 0 deputy chiefs, 0 chiefs. He sits here and talks about diversity and what he wants to do. He's a promise man. He's a buzzword man. He's a politician. You don't want or need a politician as your county prosecutor.
Let me say that I agree with Ron that we need to do better in our Columbus diversity. But we also have the intentionality to make a difference. We spend nearly $1 million on diversity training because we know we need to improve our diversity ranks. There has been no effort to improve the diversity ranks within the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. So I do agree with Mr. O'Brien. I do agree with him. We need to be better on diversity in the city of Columbus, and we are intentionally going out of our way to do that. there has been no intentionality to make that a difference in the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. When I am prosecutor, it will be a priority.
I need
Well,
to
he's
stop.
tone deaf. He didn't hear a word I said. We work daily on the problem, Zach, and you know it.
I need to stop you both here. I have 10 or 15 more questions, but my turn is over. And now it's the turn of the questions from the audience. Again, our program committee members will read the questions from the audience.
Hello, my name is Kate Blakemore, and I'm asking this question on behalf of Jenna Beadle, and this is for both candidates. As you know, human trafficking is a major issue in the state of Ohio. Programs like the Catch Court have helped to alleviate recidivism amongst survivors. What do both of you plan to do as prosecutor to assist survivors in reintegrating them into society as independent and thriving citizens?
I've been working very closely, especially over the past 2 years, with Judge Herbert in the Catch Court because of how important and tragic this issue is in our community. And Judge Herbert points out that approximately 95% of the women that are being human trafficked have drug addiction issues. So we have to be more progressive on providing the intensive drug treatment that is necessary to get these women, who are mainly women, back to the lives that they deserve, to get them connected to the children that they have. And it needs to be all intensive, not just drug treatment, but trauma treatment because of the historical problems that women have come through the Catch Court and the trauma assistance that they need. So we have expanded, under my leadership on Columbus City Council, expanded the Catch Court's reach so that women can get more resources. We added an extra probation officer so that they can work with not-for-profits to get the resources that they need. This is a very important issue in our community because of it's also indirectly, believe it or not, it indirectly also applies to the quality of life that we have in our neighborhoods because this is modern-day sexual slavery. The only thing that's different is instead of historical slavery using chains, the pimps today use heroin. And this is happening right here in our hometown. So that if we want to improve quality of life where prostitution exists, we have to tackle and be very tough on the traffickers. We have to be very tough on the traffickers, both drug and human traffickers. But the human traffickers have found it more profitable to be a human trafficker than a drug trafficker. So that we have to be aggressive on them, but provide the treatment that women need through diversion programs, through Catch Court, so that they can get the resources that they desperately need to get them reunited with their children, to get them back on track.
Do you want to hear the question again, or are you good?
No, I am good. Thank you. Again, it's not something we will do. It's something that we are doing. We have been a member of the Human Trafficking Task Force here in Central Ohio, operated by the Ohio Organized Crime Commission. I'm a former member, as a matter of fact, of that commission. And actually, we are one of the few prosecutor offices in Ohio that have prosecuted a human trafficking case with a 10-year prison sentence. We prosecuted that jointly with Carol Luper, the prosecutor in Delaware County, assisted with the search warrants. It was a task force case where people in the Powell area, both in the Columbus side and the Delaware County side, were operating a human trafficking residence. And that case was tried 3 weeks in Delaware County, covered by the media. We are, in addition to that, in juvenile court, we recently worked with Judge Kim Brown to establish with a magistrate there a docket, a separate docket to deal with human trafficking and juveniles that may be subject to that, who are lured as runaways into drugs, lured into the trap of prostitution because they have nowhere else to stay. So that is something that we have been working on, and I hope that we will continue to be working on in the future because it is a real problem.
I'm Roger Blackwell, reading a question from Trip Lazarus for both candidates. Do you think the Franklin County Prosecutor should investigate the flow of money from bad charter school operators to state senators and representatives?
Ron?
Well, I don't know that that is happening, Roger. And the questioner, I suppose, has read some talking points that came from Progress Ohio that deal with contributions. I don't know if those were out-of-state contributions to charter school operators, as Mr. Klein had secured. But typically, we get our cases from law enforcement agencies, be it the Columbus Police, the Sheriff, one of 32 law enforcement agencies here in Franklin County. I don't get up in the morning and read the newspaper and decide to issue a grand jury subpoena because of what I read in the paper. I don't launch political investigations against who I perceive to be either enemies or the enemies of my supporters. And so if there is a violation, I think that the Ohio Elections Commission, who we get cases from, even though this year they would have a field day with the lies being told on the airways, I might add, but they are no longer able to do that. But we get some cases from them. We get some cases from the Inspector General like that, the Legislative Inspector General, the Ohio Ethics Commission. Those agencies initiate the investigations and then bring to us their results. That avoids a partisan witch hunt by politicians who happen to be elected as prosecutor in chasing enemies or rewarding friends. So I'm not sure if there is evidence of illegalities apart from contributions. That's something that those agencies would investigate, and if there's evidence that can be submitted to me, I wouldn't investigate it. I would give it to those agencies to investigate. We are a prosecutorial office, not an investigative office in the true sense. So we work with, whether it's the Highway Patrol or other agencies, BCI, I would refer it to them for them to investigate and then bring back the results to me.
Well, the Columbus Dispatch has done exhaustive reporting on charter schools, and they have indicated, at least in their editorial page, that they believe that there is a flow. I'm not privy to those facts, so it is hard for one to make that determination. I do think that the buck does stop with the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office when it comes to bad charter schools. And there's been extensive reporting around the state of Ohio, including a columnist from the Cleveland Plain Dealer, who used to be the publisher, that went on a historical rant of some problems that have been plaguing charter schools in Ohio, and then at the very end said, "Ron O'Brien, where are you?" Because of some of the misconduct that has been alleged. And my understanding is that Dave Yost is saying that he's waiting on Ron O'Brien, and Ron O'Brien's saying he's waiting on Dave Yost. And we don't know where on the spectrum bad state law versus mismanagement versus illegal conduct some of these charter schools are operating, but they're milking out milking taxpayers and screwing over children out of a quality education.
You know, I would just add is I don't see John Fuddy, the Columbus Dispatch reporter, here. I don't know if Rick Rowan is here, but Dave Yost, when you made that statement last time, Dave Yost contacted Mr. Fuddy and said, "I'd be happy to explain the process to you. I'd happy to explain that there's an audit. The Columbus Public School audit took over 2 years before they sent me some cases that were prosecuted. The state auditor, in a report in March, in writing, online, for anyone that may want to check, said they're investigating those allegations at the Ohio Department of Education. Prosecutors don't train up in the sandbox of the FBI, the Ethics Commission, or the state auditor when they're doing an investigation and trying to do an independent and parallel investigation. That's bad practice. Experienced prosecutors know that. Experienced prosecutors who are non-political know that.
My name's Tim Sword, and I'm reading on behalf of Michael Snyder. This is for both candidates. If elected, what would you do to address the heroin drug problem?
Well, I think we touched upon this in our previous dialogue, but we have to continue our aggressive enforcement on people that are bringing the drugs into the United States. And conversely, we also have to be more progressive in the treatment that individuals need to pull themselves out of this cycle of addiction. Because the cycle of addiction breeds the cycle of incarceration, that breeds the cycle of poverty, and then it becomes a generational problem. We also have to take a step back and understand that because heroin has affected people in the suburbs and it's become a mainstream media problem that we're now finally talking about addiction not as a moral failing, but as a mental health problem. But this has been a problem, addiction has been a problem affecting communities of color for decades. We can't fix the historical wrongs of what has led to the mass incarceration, which has been primarily the over incarceration due to drugs. But we can, going forward, be more progressive in providing the treatment that they need. So as prosecutor, I think it's twofold as it relates to treatment. The first is when people are touching the criminal justice system, having more progressive diversion programs and expansion of drug court, and looking at best practices that are going on around the country to get people the treatment they need. The second is we shouldn't have to wait for people to get involved with the criminal justice system in order to get them the treatment that they need. And that is the proactive role I believe a prosecutor can play. We shouldn't have to sit back and wait for someone to touch the criminal justice system. Now, I understand that is not the traditional role, but I think in the 21st century, that is the role that the prosecutor should be playing, not just on addiction issues and mental health issues, but also on reentry issues. Playing quarterback, not just sitting on the task force. I know Mr. O'Brien sits on a task force, a reentry task force. But who is stepping up to the plate to actually sit down with individuals that are coming out of the system and pairing them up with the job opportunities that are available? That is an active role a prosecutor can play, because if you truly want to make us safer, you have to give people the economic opportunity they need so they can provide for their families so they don't recidivate. If you truly want to make us safer, you got to wean people off the drugs that they have, give them the trauma-assisted care that they need so they don't go continue to buy drugs. Like, that is the proactive approach that we can do as a community, because these are complex issues, but I know we can do them together. I'm confident of it. It's the Columbus way, and there's no reason why it can't be the Franklin County way as well.
I'm at a loss, folks. I think Mr. Klein should be running for the Director of Employment Services based on the answer he just gave. It is not the job of the prosecutor to match people coming out of prison with employment opportunities. Although I work with Michael, Marilyn Brown's aide, on the reentry task force. And yes, I am on many task forces. And the ones I'm on, I go to the meetings, Zach. You were the city's representative on the Criminal Justice Planning Board for a year. You didn't come to one meeting. You didn't send one representative to one of those meetings. The commissioners didn't reappoint you this year either. If you have such an interest in these things, rather than your political aspirations, I suggest you get involved with them, and get involved with them on a daily basis, and get involved with what the job is, not the employment agency for people coming out of prison, but serving on Maryland's task force for reentry. And I think Michael Daniels is doing a good job in that regard. He's doing a good job with the CQE effort that goes to the judges in trying to attack this heroin problem. And I don't want to repeat myself, but I went to the judge, expanded the court in 2009, expanded it in 2011 and 2012 with the pill docket and the heroin docket. We have 172 people on the heroin docket today. Judge Vanderkar, before he retired, told me that 71% of the people, a year after they got out of his drug court, were still not subject of a new arrest. I think that's progress. I would like to continue that progress, and I'd like to defer finding jobs for people coming out of prisons to those that know more about it than me.
If I may, Carol, is that okay? The planning board that Ron is referring to, the council safety chairman is an automatic designee. And when I chaired safety, I was given a seat on that board, and I sent my designee. As council president, there is no seat on the board, which is why I was not reappointed. So facts matter. Secondly, there's a fundamental difference between the way Ron has historically run the office and the way that I view the office in the 21st century. And that's great for the voters. The voters can choose the old way or the new way. I believe that there is a proactive role for the office to play when it comes to issues like reentry. And if you disagree with that, that's okay. You can vote for Ron. But if you believe that there should be an outward-facing component to the office, if you believe we should have diversity in the office, if you believe we should be treating underlying reasons and being more progressive on underlying treatment issues, if you think that the county prosecutor, to make you safer, needs to get people job opportunities so they don't continue to commit crimes when they come out of jail with little skills so they can provide for their family, That's the 21st century proactive way we should be doing law enforcement. That's not social service. That's effective law enforcement in the 21st century.
We want to get one more question in before you each have a chance to wrap it up. Kermit.
I'm Kermit Whitfield, and I'm asking the question for Reverend Bruce Smith, and this is for both candidates. Please comment on your experience with the Interfaith Community Organizing Group, BREAD, which stands for Building Responsibility, Equity, and Dignity. 2 minutes each. Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you. Actually, I have worked on several projects with BREAD. It is, I think, 32 or 52. I can't remember the right number. Churches that BREAD is the umbrella organization for that identify problems in the community and try and address them. For about 5 years, I was chairman of a truancy initiative that tried to develop best practices to try and keep kids in school. Too often I saw the kids that were getting bound over for trial as an adult, their first contact in juvenile court was, guess what, truancy. So if we could solve the truancy problem, those best practices, I think, were adopted by a bill that passed the legislature this year. I forget the number, 110 or 140. Somebody here from the legislature may remember that. That was a very successful effort, but it was too limited due to lack of resources. The commissioners devoted a substantial amount of money over a period of time to fund it, and it, I believe, was very successful. I currently am working with BREAD on some other projects. They include, over the years, drug court. They include, over the years, current initiative on identification for those that are undocumented that could be recognized by law enforcement. So I believe I have a long and cooperative record working with BREAD.
Kind of working backwards of what Ron just said, currently in conversations with BREAD about the One ID, the photo identification that Ron mentioned. And I have worked with BREAD when I chaired development on Columbus City Council with a small business expansion and investing a record amount of money in small business, and BREAD was one of those partners.
It's now time for each one to have 30 seconds to wrap up. Mr. Klein, 30 seconds.
Well, thanks, Carol, and thank you, Columbus Metropolitan Club. I'm very passionate about these issues. I have a young family at home, and I know that we can do better in the criminal justice system, and the gatekeeper of the criminal justice system is the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. And I think that what you saw today is a clear choice of a vision of what we think the prosecutor's office should be, and that's good for the voters. I have respect for Ron O'Brien. I'll be the first to say that publicly. But it's just two different ways that you view the prosecutor's office. One that is outward facing, more active in the community, and one that is more courthouse oriented. And that's what the voters are going to decide. And I welcome that choice, and I respectfully ask for your vote on November 8th. Every day's election day in Central Ohio between now and November 8th. But I respectfully ask for your vote so that we can have a more progressive, outward facing office.
Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate the chance to be here. I think there is a stark difference between myself and Mr. Klein. I thought I knew what I was going to say here, but I, within the last 24 hours, saw a TV ad where I've been accused of letting a rapist off, letting a murderer off, and having a pregnant woman in a jail I don't operate, subject to being abused and me doing nothing about it. It's politics of a desperate politician, number one, but also, I think, symptomatic of a problem with Mr. Klein's candidacy. Someone with no experience, doesn't know what the office does, tries to put on the prosecutor things outside the prosecutor's control. There was, this morning, delivered to Mr. Klein, and I got in this business representing victims, a letter that asked him to pull his TV ad that falsely states, I plea bargained a case involving a 10-year-old sexual assault victim, and that ad contains false, malicious, inaccurate information. The family of that young victim asked him to pull his ad, and I think that his lack of experience is shown by the disrespect of those poor victims.
We are out of time. I hope that each candidate will stay afterward and answer more of your questions. Daren?
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your time. Thank you to Mr. O'Brien, Mr. Klein. Thank you. I'm sure everybody enjoyed today's forum. This is what CMC is all about, is opportunities for conversations like this for our education. We encourage you to continue the conversation with coffee and cookies afterwards. Remember that you can view and share all of our forums on CTV, Columbus Television, on WOSU, and PBS affiliates statewide through the Ohio channel and anytime on CMC's website via YouTube. Again, let's thank our sponsors, Hannah News Bureau, The Daily Reporter, the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation, and Franklin County Farm Bureau. Thank you very much. Thank you for attending. Have a good afternoon. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. You did a wonderful job.